All right, welcome everybody. This is the first lecture in our series of lectures here for the World Civ Summer 2024 classes, right? Potentially for some future classes as well, because I typically reuse some of these videos. But I just want to be the first person to welcome you. I'm Professor Rainmaker, so I'll be your teacher for the semester, right? At any point, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to let me know through my email, right? Typically, the summer sessions are a little bit more intensive than our in-class 15-week summer and fall sessions. So make sure that you plan accordingly. This one runs about 4 weeks from, I believe, the beginning of June through the beginning of July. So whereas in the 15-week sections, you're going to be covering basically about 15 weeks worth of material in 15 weeks. This class, you're going to be covering it in about 4. So it's pretty fast. It's pretty intensive. If at any point during the process you have questions, let me know. I'm more than happy to help you all out. But for this semester, I'll be teaching 2 classes. One of them is the hybrid class, and one of them is the online section, which is the V. So if you've got VO1, the video section, or the HB, which is the hybrid section, the rules are very similar for both classes. So I'm only recording one of these because there's just slight differences between the 2 models, and I'll explain those as we go along. But I want to be the first to welcome you to world history. We'll be taking a look in this class at really everything from the beginning of time all the way to about the 13th, 14th century. The question I typically get is, why is it that we decide to stop at the 14th century? Well, that's a good question for the state of Texas. So Texas is kind of unique in that regard, stopping in really the Renaissance period. Most other places that I've taught at, typically they either follow Constantinople in the 1450s or 1500 usually is a pretty good kind of cutoff point for the beginning of what we consider kind of the pre-modern world and what's considered the ancient world. So it's kind of an interesting dating system, but that's pretty much how it works out. So again, let me welcome you to world history. Again, I'm Professor Raymaker. I've been teaching here at Texas Southmost College for about the last 9 to 10 years. It's been a very interesting ride so far. I'm very glad that I took the position that I did. I really enjoy what I do. I hope that kind of filters out through the lectures. Typically, I tend to tell students to register for the in-class ones, not necessarily the online sections. Reason being, I tend to think that the show is better in person. As you can see behind me, right, we've got an abundance of people here, right, listening in. These are my helpers, right, that I help to teach my class. Each of these is a uniform from a distinct period of either world history or US history. So you can typically see that I have a lot of passion in what I do. I spend, thousands of dollars of my own money, right, and invested into these outfits that you see. Each of these is a actual either replica or some of them are the real thing from the actual time periods that they represent. Everything from our Civil War guy, we got an ancient Greek, there's a conquistador, a Viking, we got an Egyptian pharaoh back there, a centurion from Roman period. We've got the Templar. We have my grandfather's World War II uniform that he actually wore. And then we've got a Mexican War veteran over here as well. And there's a World War I guy in the corner, but he's kind of hard to see. So these guys help me as far as the presentations, especially the in-class sections, because, I'll typically put these on and I'll come in and talk about a periods, whether it's the Romans or Greeks or whatever. And I think it's a lot easier to see it. It kind of brings in the haptic learning much more effectively. So for y'all in the online sections, you've got the lectures, which have been done really in the last 5 or 6 years. Occasionally, I think there's a few of them where I might get dressed up. I know I do bring helmets and swords and that kind of stuff out. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, make sure you do watch the video lectures because it does have that kind of stuff in it. But for the hybrid, you guys would be fortunate. We'll bring them in a couple of times this semester just so you get a chance to see some kind of hands-on learning. So yeah, as far as an instructor, I've been teaching here about 10 years. I for the most part, think that history is the most fascinating of all the disciplines because it feeds into everything, right? And anytime you study physics or chemistry or law enforcement, one of the first things that you always look at in any research study is the history of that particular object or that particular discipline. We look at why all of these policies went into place. And so that's, as historians, we dwell on the why. A lot of the questions that I'm going to be asking you this semester are going to deal with the question why. Why is it that this is the way that it is? And hopefully, through our 5 themes, which we'll explore throughout the semester. You'll be able to answer that by the end of the semester. So let's go ahead and take a look at the PowerPoint. Without further ado, I've just got a brief simple syllabus. This is going to be posted under the tab Simple Syllabus, so you should be able to see it. Basically, what it in essence is a syllabus system that we adopted, I think, about last year, and all the syllabi are fed into this. And so all your classes, right, should be fed into this system. That way that if we ever need to make changes, it shouldn't be a problem. So if you see anything incorrect on it, let me know. For those of you in the hybrid course, I understand, obviously, this is the VO1 section, but the rules are similar for both of y'all. You're both taking really the same class. It's just going to be offered in kind of a different way as far as its delivery. So first of all, this is 2321, which is World Civilizations 1. You see the section start and end date. You've also got my information up here, right? Robert Raymaker. My email here, rob.raymaker@tsc.edu. This is the easiest way for you to get in touch with me. So at any point during the semester, if we have problems of some kind, highly recommend that you basically get a hold of me through here. When we talk about like, I'm going to miss class, like what should I do? Or if I'm not going to be there to do something, that's typically how you're going to get in touch with me. I typically don't have office hours during the summer. If I do, most of the time it's like an hour or so after class or before class. So sometimes I'm there, sometimes I'm not. They're not real strenuous about office hours during the summer just because instructors are always coming and going. So that being said, if you do need to meet with me for some specific reason, I do have an office on the second floor of the South Building. You are free to come by, make an appointment first if necessary, and I will meet with you within reason, certainly, during the days that we have class. If it's some kind of emergency and you need to call me, office phone is located here as well, 956-295-3524. I don't get a lot of phone calls because most of y'all are part of the email generation, but if you do decide to do so, right, it's there for your convenience. All right, so course description. Survey of the political, social, economic. This is where I think we can kind of break out our 5 themes, right? So at this point, we're taking a look at the 5 themes of the course, which are going to be consistent from the beginning all the way to the end. The 5 themes are number 1, political, number 2, social, number 3, economic, number 4, military, technological, and then 5, lastly, which is our global theme or transnational theme. Right. Those are the 5 that we'll take a look at the entire semester. So you'll see essay questions, you'll see short answers. We'll do activities that are based on this. I'm just going to literally just like pound this into y'all's heads because that's what we'll look at as far as the lens, as far as we discover the course. Because if we're just going to cover world history, there's a lot of societies, there's a lot of people, and there's a lot of time that we're going to have to cover in a very short amount of time. So to prevent that, what we basically have is this kind of analysis exercise, right, where we break it into 5 themes. So we'll look at the Romans or the Greeks or the Assyrians or whoever it is that we look at through each of these themes. What was their government like? What was the economic system? How did they exert control over other empires or dynasties? And then, lastly, of course, the technologies that they had at that given time. So that's basically what we're going to be using. Make sure you know those 5 themes because they will come back to haunt you if you don't know them. All right. So those are our 5 themes. Now, obviously, they fit into our learning outcomes and our learning objectives, but this is a course description, as you can see here, that basically looks at all of the societies of the world, pretty much all the way up to about the 14th century. So if you've got a society that's like right on the edge, I know I get a ton of Aztec and Inca people who really enjoy those societies. We can find a way to make them work. I don't typically cover those societies because most of their history is going to be after 1400, but societies that are close will work. Again, especially for your signature assignment, it's going to have to be something before 1400. So that's really where the course description is important. What will we look at in this course? Just about everything. The one exception being is the United States. United States history is a separate class, and that will be covered in a completely separate section. Same thing is true of Mexican American studies. That'll be covered in our Mexican American history course. So we have other instructors that teach that. I don't tend to want to step on their feet too often with that. So this one is going to focus more on other societies outside of the US and Mexico. So we're looking at everything from North America, Asia, Europe, everything from Romans, Assyrians, Greeks, the Middle Ages, even the Far East as well, which is, I think, what separates us from, for example, Western Civ. The Western Civ course that we offer here, it focuses primarily just on the West, which is going to be largely Europe. There isn't really a lot of Africa. There isn't going to be a lot of Asia in there. This course looks at Africa, Asia. We'll look at the origins of Chinese civilization, the Indians, and we're going to look at a lot of places that you wouldn't get in Western Civ. So that's kind of my disclaimer as far as the differences between those two respective courses. And if you've taken Western Civ, you'll have a pretty good idea of what we're going to look at, but there's going to be societies we talk about that ultimately are not covered in Western Civ. Okay, so we looked at the course description. Let's take a look at your learning outcomes. There are 3 learning outcomes in the course. Create an argument through the use of historical evidence, analyze and interpret primary and secondary sources, and then lastly, to take a look at the ripple effects or the 5 themes, right, which we just talked about. So if you can do those by the end of the course, then the state is going to consider you to be successful. We also have core objectives. These are skills we call marketable skills that you should have at the end of the course. Regardless of what field that you go into, you should be able to do these things, right? One of the things that I really enjoy about the historical discipline is that we tend to teach students skills that are valuable in pretty much any field. So basically, whether you become a scientist or whether you become a pharmacist or whether you become a social worker, there are things that you learn in Western Civ and World Civ that are going to help you regardless. One of them, of course, is communication, right? You're going to need to be able to communicate with people somewhere, somehow, sometime. It's one of the most important skills that's on the market today. So communication, you're going to be doing things like debates. We're going to have contests in class, the hybrid class. If you're part of the video class, we'll find a way to do that as well. So you'll be working on your communication skills. It's just not going to be in person, right? It's going to be done through either discussion posts or we're going to have debates and those kinds of things in that class as well. But they'll be kind of on a different timetable than the hybrid course. Same thing with critical thinking skills. You'll be refining these over the course of the semester. Creative thinking, inquiry, analysis, evaluation. You'll be creating arguments and then defending them, which is one of your learning outcomes. You'll be creating a signature assignment at the end of the semester, which tests your skills. So all those are part of your critical thinking. And then the last 2, social and personal responsibility, I feel are connected. I don't really see a difference between these 2. I think they kind of fit the same area, which is responsibility. So that includes like understanding outside cultures. It includes being able to make good choices, basically to become a decent person. And certainly as far as a skill, you can be the brightest person in the world. But if you're lazy and if you can't get the job done, if you can't show up on time, that's going to be a real problem. If you can't get your assignments in on time, that's going to be an issue for you. So I have deadlines. They're very firm for that reason, because the deadlines are there really to assess you on your responsibility. And responsibility is very important to have, because without it, right, you're not going to be half the worker that you need to be or that society needs you to be. So at that point, does anybody have any questions as far as what the state expects for you and how to get in touch with me? Okay, so one of the posts and the discussion basically says, so you're obviously not from around here. Can you tell us a little bit where you came from? I came from the lovely, magical land known as Iowa. I get students occasionally that will give me potatoes. That's Idaho, so they are very different. But Iowa is in the Corn Belt, Midwestern work ethic's very important there. I was basically there for most of my life until I moved down here when I was about 27, 28 years old. So about 10 years ago. And I will tell you that I enjoyed teaching there, but it just kind of paled in comparison to here. I mean, you've got, a beach within 40 minutes, you've got delicious food, friendly people, uh, beautiful climate, right? Yeah, if you want to just, roast all the time. But I really enjoy working down here. I knew when I first took the job that the president of TSC at the time had told me that we're going to be waging a war on poverty, kind of like Lyndon Johnson, right? And that you're going to see, students who are not very prepared for college and come from families that don't really value that. And so I took that as kind of my job, right? My goal was to try to elevate students to bring them to that next level where they can compete with students who go to UT Austin and students who go to Texas A&M. And so it's been a difficult process. And so I've really tried hard. I think I've got students who have been very successful. I know some students that are working at various schools, the ISDs, because I'm writing recommendations all the time for them. I just wrote a recommendation this morning, in fact, for a student. So my students are successful. But it's the students that have that drive. It's the students that do their work. It's the students that show up. If you put the effort in, then you get the output on the other side. So if this is not, I'm not an easy professor. I think that there are definitely easier ones out there who have like hundreds of points of extra credit. I don't. I have minimal extra credit. So this is a class where you're going to have to work. And if you're willing to work your butt off, then, you're going to, have the knowledge that you need to be successful because many other people before you have done it. So yeah, I'm not from here originally, but I've become a Valley resident. I enjoy living here. And most of all, I enjoy the students that I teach. Sure. Yeah, no problem. All right, so taking a look at the other parts of our syllabus, we have our core objectives, which we already discussed. We have our course materials, which is your book. This is the McKay book, also known as Understanding World Societies. The book, you can see you can just plug the ISBN number in. That's probably the fastest way to get it. It's strongly recommended. It is not required. You can probably pass the class without the book. The downside is that you're going to miss a lot of the contextual information, and you are really going to want to look at those PowerPoints and definitely to watch the videos. All of the course lectures have been posted, so it is up to you to make sure that you watch them, take notes diligently. That's especially for those of you that are in the online section. There is no course meetings. You're never going to see me physically face to face. So because of that, it's really important that you basically make sure that you stay on top of your studies. Make sure that you're consistently going through those modules. And then you take a quiz, which tests you over each module. And then we move on, and then eventually you get an exam. And so we'll take a look at exams and what they ultimately factor in. But as far as course materials, book is strongly recommended. Not required, right? But definitely recommended. It will help you tremendously if you take it. The hybrid courses, you're going to have me one day a week to help you. So that at least will give you, some chances to ask questions face to face. I think students tend to learn better that way. But I understand the convenience of an online model, and certainly TSC really pushes online education. So it's one of those things where it's going to happen regardless. So we try to make the best of it as we can. But ultimately, yeah, as far as the course, get the book. If you do so, if you the first question you come to me and say, I'm failing this course, why? I'm going to say, do you have the book? And if you say, I don't have the book, then there's your first reason. There's the first reason why you're not doing so well. Course components, you got reading and resources, papers, assignments, unit quizzes, exams, and then activities for hands-on history. That includes not only our presentations, but we'll have debates, contests. We do a variety of things, which we did with the first hybrid course I ever taught was actually last semester. It's kind of a new model that we're going to. And so I kind of had a lot of fun with those students. They did fairly well at being able to meet the challenges, which means, you need to be prepared before you come to class, right? So everything we take a look at in the schedule, do the readings beforehand so that when you show up, it's more of a discussion. That way, if you've got any questions, right, and I can help you out. So that's pretty much how it works. Now, as far as your grading schemes, grading scheme is based on a variety of different things. You have your participation, which is about 20%, your chapter quizzes, which are about 10%. You get one of those after every chapter that we finish. Your exams, which we'll have 3 over the course of the semester, and then your signature assignment, which is going to be worth about 10%. Your grade conversion table, right? Everything's based on a 4-point scale. This is your course calendar. The course calendar is very important for you to make sure that you stick with this. Remember, this syllabus can be found under the Simple Syllabus tab. I've posted a link in the syllabus bar. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So if it doesn't work, just make sure that you go to the Simple Syllabus bar because that's where it's supposed to be. But in the course calendar, this is something you'll want to check back with. If you got to miss a day for whatever reason, right, this is what we'll be covering on each respective day. Week 1, you guys can kind of look at it as day 1 because again, it's based off a 15-week model. So each week for you guys is kind of like a day because we have really, I think about 15 to 18 course meetings. So it really kind of rounds out. So Basically, for week one or day one, as you want to put it, we're looking at the syllabus, the emergence of the first civilizations. You'll have your first quiz, which will be due over the course of the weekend. And then essentially, you've got your assigned readings in there as well. Week two, we look at the Bronze Age and et cetera, et cetera. So I'm not going to go through the entire schedule because you guys can read, but make sure that you take a look at this. If you miss a day, you're going to miss an entire week of material. So it's very important that you try to get there every day as much as you can. For the hybrid course, you guys certainly will meet one day a week. We'll try to go over at least the entire week's worth of material in one day. Uh, Probably not going to be able to do that because it's pretty dense, but most of it is going to be question and answer. So I'm there largely to answer any questions you have. Make sure that you've done the work before you get there because I can't possibly speed food or spoon feed you, 4 weeks of information in just a very short period of time, right? So that's just true. Online sections, it's really important for you guys with the calendar because this is how you'll work through each respective week. All right. So this is what's going to be due each day. If you stay on task with this calendar, right, then ultimately you'll be able to meet all of your deadlines. All right. So any questions as far as the deadlines and the schedule is concerned? Okay. All right, moving on to the next section, which takes a look at assignments. As you can see, our assignments are many. These are ways in which you're going to be earning your grade in this course. I know it's the part that most of you are probably most concerned with. First of all, participation. Participation is more than just showing up, although for the hybrid course, there will be an attendance model. So if you're part of the hybrid course, right, you are expected to attend one class period a week. We will offer a class period on Mondays, and I believe it starts at 10:30, right? So we have the 10:30 class, all right, you show up, right, you make sure you sign in. Sign-in sheets are provided by the students. I don't create a course sign-in. Reason for that is because my roster is out of date the moment that I print it. So it just doesn't really make sense. Typically, you will start a sheet of paper each day. You'll put the date on it, and then you guys will sign your name in. You don't have to put your student IDs. That only happens when we have multiple people with the same name. If I've got 8 Juan Garzas in one class, then that's where the IDs come in. But I wouldn't put your ID unless you absolutely have to. So that's for the hybrid course. For those of you in the online section, you don't have, lucky you, an attendance grade per se based on your attendance in class. Yours is going to be based off of discussion prompts. It's going to be based off your quizzes. It's going to be based off of things that we do online. So you're going to be doing a lot of the same things. They're just going to be done online on your own terms, as opposed to the hybrid course where your stuff's still going to be due at the same time, but you're going to have one day a week where you have an instructor to actually ask questions to. So that's really the only difference when it comes to participation. If you need to miss class in the hybrid section, very easy. All you got to do is let me know beforehand or at the time of. Any absence that I'm informed of after it happens, that is an unexcused absence. And so any activities we do that day are going to count against you. You're going to receive a 0. Obviously, one activity or 2 activities, missing them probably will not tank your grade, but they add up really fast. And considering how easy it is essentially to get lost in this whole thing, I have students every semester. The way that they fail is typically by missing courses. That's always, almost always the case. There's very few students I have that legitimately attended every class and took diligent notes and failed the course. Like it just very rarely happens. So for y'all, that's really your secret to success. If you want to be successful in the course, make sure that you're there. Right? And obviously the dividends will pay off at the end. So yeah, make sure you let me know if you need to miss. I can give you an excused absence, but I only give so many. Typically, there are no drop policies at TSC. Instructors don't have drop capabilities. We can drop students for like the first week, I think, if you don't show up, but after that, right, you're in the course. So again, TSC wants that federal money, right? So while you're there, all right, make sure that you adhere to the course policies and procedures. If you do end up in a situation where you miss 1 or 2 weeks, you've missed the equivalent of like 4 to 8 weeks of material, which is going to be really hard to back up from. So remember, that's a short class. We only go from the beginning of June all the way to the end or the beginning of July. So you've only got 4 weeks. So you miss a week, it's like missing a quarter of the course. So try to avoid missing. I know sometimes it happens. If it does happen, just let me know. Now, as far as chapter quizzes, at the end of each section, you're going to have a chapter quiz. Chapter quizzes are essentially due in bunches. So in the 15-week sections, they're due at the end of each week. Because you guys only have 4 weeks, the rule still applies. You guys will have essentially 4 quizzes due each week. So you can break them down. So what some students do is listen to the lecture on Monday, and then they do the first lecture. They do the first quiz. And then Tuesday, they do the second one. Wednesday, you do the third one. And then Thursday, they do the fourth one. That's fine. Whatever works for you. I mean, some of you wait to the last minute and procrastinate. I would not recommend that because, 4 weeks worth of material and like a couple hours, it's going to be really hard to do. So I strongly suggest that you take each quiz, like look at the material, take the quiz right then, get your stuff done ahead of time. So that way you can devote your time and energy to other pursuits. So yeah, each quiz consists of 10 multiple choice questions. Typically, I see a misprint here. Students typically will have 10 minutes to complete them. So ultimately, yeah, you've got about 10 minutes. It cycles pretty fast. They're short, multiple choice, 10 questions. You should be able to knock them out fairly, fairly quickly, right? If for whatever reason you have accommodations, right? For whatever those accommodations are, I can't ask you by law, federal law. So you have to bring a sheet to me that's signed by your counselor, right? And disability services. And then once that's approved and signed by me, then your accommodations can go into effect, right? You can't just say that I have them and I didn't show them to the instructor. I have to be able to see the sheet that you give to me. And then from that point forward, typically time and a half is one of the big ones. There's some other ones like having somebody write your notes for you, etc. I will talk to you at the time that you deliver that to me, and we'll figure out, how that's going to work out for you. So typically time and a half means that you're going to have a little bit extra time. The problem with that, of course, though, is you're still going to have to do it by the deadline. You don't get an extension on deadlines. It's just you're going to get additional time to complete each quiz or exam. So that's typically how those work. So that's as far as chapter quizzes. You're going to have one at the end of each chapter. You're going to have usually about 4 due at the end of each week. The week ends for me on Monday at 8 a.m. So all of your coursework from the previous week has to be due the following Monday at 8 a.m. And so anything you try to submit at 8:01, it's not going to go through because the machine will essentially just shuts down at that point, and anything that's in there submits. So if you run into a problem where for whatever reason you couldn't submit your quiz or the quiz got stuck or you ran into technical problems, if that happens, just let me know. Let me know before the quiz closes because at 8:01, I'm not going to hear the excuses. But anytime before that, you ran into issues, whatever, I'll take a look at each case by case and then it becomes an instructor decision. So depending on what's going on, I'll make a decision as to what we need to do to fix the problem. Right. But you got to take the responsibility. And that's the big part of what we're assessing there with that learning outcome. So those are your chapter quizzes. All right. Now your exams, you're going to have 3 of them over the course of the semester. So your first exam covers weeks 1 through 5. Second exam, weeks 6 through 10, and then weeks 11 through 15 will be covered in exam number 3. So they're not cumulative, right? You're not going to see stuff from exam 1 and exam 3. So my advice is make sure you stay on top of your assignments, especially when it comes to the exams. Exams are basically big quizzes. So you're looking at 50 questions, multiple choice around there. And then typically you're also going to see some kind of essay component. The essay is there not to punish you because I'm not necessarily looking to do that. The essay is there to really demonstrate your writing abilities. Now, this is important, and I get this pretty much every semester. As you are submitting your essays for exam 1, 2, and 3, right, it is very important that you do not use ChatGPT or online resources such as AI. AI is magnificent. It does a lot of wonderful things. It is not great at writing essays. What it does is it basically vomits out information. It has a ton of details. It just isn't really good at putting them together because, again, it's not a human, right? It's designed to just give you as much information as possible. So if you just copy and paste off Chat GPT, I'm going to know, right? Not only do we have AI plagiarism checkers, but it's obvious. It's obvious in the way that the computer structures it. So don't do it. When it comes to writing essays, make sure that you yourself do so. The same thing is true with group chats. I know they're group chats. I know they exist. I know you guys abuse them terribly. All right. When you do a group chat, right, if you are copying what somebody else wrote, that's plagiarism, right? And if I see it, then zeros are going to be dished out for everyone who's responsible, right? You may even get expelled from the institution. It's not worth the headache. Make sure that you do your own work. And if you do that, you're not going to run into any problems. So any questions as far as AI, plagiarism, etc.? So one of the questions basically says I use Grammarly to structure my essays. Is that considered plagiarism? Using Grammarly in and of itself doesn't necessarily constitute plagiarism, in my opinion, right? But it depends. If you're getting Grammarly to write the entire essay for you, that's plagiarism. If you're getting Grammarly to check your writing and make it more clear, that's a different story. Do you understand the difference between the two? The core of it was written by you and the information and the ideas are yours, but the way in which they're worded is going to be essentially created by AI or going to be helped by AI. The same thing you'd use with a spell checker. So to me, it's not that big a deal, but it does become a big deal when the computer writes all of it for you. And you guys, of course, know the difference between the two. So as long as you're writing your own stuff and as long as you're putting forth the effort, you shouldn't run into a lot of problems in this course. This is not rocket science for most of the time. No, that'll basically take care of, I think, your exams. There's no makeups for exams. So again, you'll have a due date. They'll usually open on a Friday. They're going to close on Monday. So you'll have 3 days to submit them, right? I don't take anything after it. I don't take late exams. So make sure that you submit them when you're supposed to submit them. If for whatever reason you can't submit them in that 72-hour window, tell me ahead of time and we can figure out something, right? But again, instructor's discretion on that. Now, as far as signature assignments, you'll also submit a signature assignment over the course of the semester, which is approximately 1,500 words. This could be about 5 paragraphs, right? So you're looking at about 300 words per paragraph. I'm not really going to nitpick on how many words it actually is. If you're at 1499, I'm not going to drop your grade 20%. But the signature assignment is really more about connecting with the material in kind of a personal way. What the signature assignment is, and I encourage you to go to Raymaker's Signature Assignment Revised, which is in your files in Canvas. That will give you a breakdown of everything I'm looking for when it comes to signature assignments. So I know it's called, I think, signature assessment now or something, or assessment assignment. They have all kinds of different terminologies that we've changed up over the course of semesters. But ultimately, it means the same thing. And what that is your signature assignment. It's going to meet most of our learning outcomes for the course. So if you look at the Raymaker Signature Assignment Revised document, it'll give you a breakdown of all of my pet peeves, right? What I'm looking for, what kind of punctuation you should use, what kind of citation systems, whatever, all that's there. So if you have questions, take a look at that document. But as for the syllabus, signature assignments can be worth about 100 points, about 10% of your grade. You're going to be essentially writing 5 paragraphs where you will create an avatar, which is a fictional character. What kind of character? A fictional character. Very good. Yeah. Somebody who's not real. And this is somebody you can associate with real people, but the person that you are writing about is not. And you're going to talk about their life. You're going to talk about how they fit into a historical era of your choosing. But the era must be within the course, right? So it has to be world history and it has to be before 1300. All right. Very important because if you cover something that's outside of our era, it's not really showing what I'm teaching. So that's why it's important to make sure that your document fits that prerogative. Now, also, you will be not only creating this character and talking about how they live, but you'll be looking at their social class, their ethnicity. You'll be looking at what did they wear, what kind of food did they eat, what challenges they face, what sources you're going to use as far as primary sources to recreate them. All those are things you're going to look at in signature assignment. So you'll have a rough draft, which will be due around week 11. The rough draft is just primarily to see if you're on the right path. It's like the first half of the assignment. And then the final assignment, which is the entire assignment complete, that's going to be due usually around week 13, right? No late signature assignments are accepted. I don't accept late work. So very important to make sure that whatever it is that you're submitting for my course, it gets submitted on time, right? Responsibility is very important to me. So make sure that you meet those guidelines. Okay. So any questions on the signature assignment? Awesome. Okay, when you write emails or assignments or submissions, those kinds of things, very important. You look at naming and submitting documents. Typically, you want to write your name and then you want to put the section that you're in. For y'all in the online section, you're in 2321 VO1. For those of you in the hybrid section, it has a ton of letters in it because they actually combined three courses into one. So you're going to want to check either your TSC online, right? Or you're going to want to take a look at what it says on your official document. That's going to tell you what it is. It should say at the top of your course as well, up where it says simple syllabus. So it should say like Summer 1 2024. So whatever that is, make sure you put that in your tagline when you write it. Reason being, we get a lot of junk mail here at TSC and a lot of stuff doesn't get through the filter. So if you don't write it that way, it's not going to get through the filter. So it's likely that I won't receive the message, right? You're going to want to know my name and you're going to know your course at the very least. And then whatever request you have or whatever you want to talk about, then at that point you write that after that as your tagline. So make sure that's your tagline so it gets to where it's supposed to go. Now, the library, TSC has a library. It's fantastic. Has, I guess, a lot of books. Actually, I think it doesn't have any books at all. I think it's a digital library. But that being said, if you need to research anything for your signature assignment, the library might be a good place to start. So make sure that you utilize that service because you're paying for it. So you might as well use it while it's on campus. Now, any assistance that you need, anything that is course related, that comes to me. I'm here to help you with anything that is course important, your grades, your assignments, the videos that we do throughout the course of the semester, and video analyses, all the signature assignment, all that stuff is going to come to me. Now, as far as you're having problems with your hard drive, your computer shooting sparks, whatever, that's something for the help desk. And the help desk is available for you from the hours that you see listed here. This support basically is there not only for Canvas, but also for any hardware issues that you might have. So again, you're probably not going to let me know that your computer is shooting sparks because I'm just going to tell you to hit it with a hammer. I'm not going to be the best person to go to for that. You're going to want somebody who's more technically sound. But anything that's course related, that goes to me. So does everybody understand kind of the difference between who handles what? Yes? Okay. So that's what you're going to be doing as far as if you have help or you need your password reset, you're going to go to the help desk. If you have questions on course content, you're going to come to me. General expectations. These are the kind of, what would Rob do? WWRD, right? This is how do you be successful, right, in a Professor Raymaker history course. Number one, be on time. Being punctual is extraordinarily important. Students who typically are late are usually students who are not prepared. Few exceptions apply. So when that happens, right, typically it's nothing wrong with it, right? Just make sure you find a seat quietly, right? Try to catch up as much as you can. Uh, for those of you in the video section and the online, you don't have to really worry about that. But this means, of course, staying on top of your homework, right? You're going to have 4 sections to turn in every single week. Make sure that you do that. There's no late work, so you're not going to be able to make that up. If you miss all 4 sections, you're going to end up with a big crater that it's going to be hard to get out from. So make sure that you stay on top of your work. And as always, if you have questions, let me know. Avoiding absences, as we mentioned before, right? Or if you do need to be absent, what should you do? Yes, let me know. Absolutely. Right. Whatever it is, just let me know. Right. I don't really care what the reasons are as long as you let me know beforehand. Right. Typically, I'll work with you. Right. So that's very important that you let me know before it happens or at the time of something like a flat tire or something. Be diligent, right? Obviously, make sure that you stay on top of your work, get it in on time. That's very important to do so. Planning ahead for your assignments and quizzes. If you can't make one, right, or you can't do it, or you're into technical problems, let me know before the deadline. When it comes to extra credit, I do offer extra credit in the course. It's not a lot of it. So it's very important, right, that you don't end up in a crater to begin with. My extra credit typically involves a variety of things. Number one, there are video analyses. One of my passions as a history instructor is I enjoy making video games, particularly not just the games themselves, but also commentaries on them. So my YouTube channel is where I do a lot of that. But for y'all, you get a chance to sample some of those videos that I've made based on games that have come out really in the last 10, 20 years. And then we take a look at history through the lens of the game. So it's important that you guys look at it and, for the most part, watch the videos, take diligent notes because you're going to have questions that are based on them. That's a really good way to get extra credit fast. Sometimes we do presentations. So I know that over the summer, sometimes we do presentations for Palo Alto National Battlefield, and we've done some for the Westlaco Museum. I know South Texas Museum has done some as well, kind of a mix of everything. So if there are opportunities like that, or I'll be, dressed up as one of these guys back here, I'll let y'all know. And if you attend, typically you can get extra points for that as well. And then third, sometimes we do game nights. It just depends on whether there's interest for it. So I've done things like Twitch streaming a game and then talking about like historically what's going on, things like Assassin's Creed Odyssey or Origins. The Assassin's Creed games are really good when it comes to the historical context. They're just horribly boring games, just button mashing. But other than that, the time that goes into them and creating them, they create these historical worlds that are amazing. So we do sometimes do those. I'll do commentaries on various games. We might have a game night where you guys actually get a chance to play, depending on the numbers. So we've done that in the past where we either did an MMO or we've played Counter-Strike. I think we've done Sim City. There's a bunch of games that we've done at one point. So just be ready. We might use Zoom. We might use other things that are available to us if necessary. And if so, I'll let you know how to get points for those. So those are really the three avenues I think of extra credit that you could potentially pursue as far as what's going to happen. Again, don't get into a position where you're relying on extra credit, right? Make sure that you do everything you can to get the points the conventional way, because I'm not going to be able to give you like 200 points at the end of the semester to get you up to a B. It just doesn't work that way. You're looking at 10 points, 10 points here or there. So if you're like at 89, it's going to make a difference. So questions on extra credit? So one of the questions says, can you tell me a little bit more about the game night that you were talking about? Yeah, the game nights typically we'll bring together multiple sections of World Civs together. And sometimes their teachers like Professor Yarker will bring their classes in as well. And so you get a chance to interact with other students at TSC. You typically will get an opportunity to play some kind of a game. We've done Age of Conan in the past, which was an MMO. So everybody like created like their warriors or mages or whatever, and we'd run around and just kill stuff for a while. That was usually pretty fun, especially around finals time when people are kind of ticked off. We would also have things that we would do like Sim City, where I'm going to make you guys into a group, and then you guys have to make executive decisions as a city council. So it's kind of all over the place. We'll just kind of see over the course of the semester. We might have one or two of them, depending on whether interest is there. And typically, you guys will sign on either through Zoom or whatever avenue that we use, and that's how you'll communicate with each other. So I also use Discord. So we have a Discord channel, but hasn't been used for a while because it's really hard to get the game nights going. Most of y'all don't have gaming computers. Makes it really difficult. Some of you are trying to use like loaner computers that are like basic level laptops, and when you're trying to use a potato computer for some of these games, they're just gonna melt. So that being said, I don't do it a whole lot because I know for some of you can't afford it. But I do offer people just the chance to be there. I know some students just attend because they want to hear, everybody complaining about how they're being killed by so and so. And some people just want to attend just to see the conflict, and that's fine too. So either way, if we do have a game night, I'll let you guys know ahead of time, and then I'll tell you the procedure that you'll need to go through for joining. One of the questions is, will you be participating as well? Yeah, I usually play too. I typically play some kind of role that, whether it's if I'm going to be a tank in an MMO game or, if we're doing some kind of first person shooter, I kind of, try to support the rest of the team as much as possible. So yeah, I'll usually be there because it's usually not fun to, play without your professor. So I'll play some kind of role as necessary. All right, the last things we'll take a look at, your mobile devices. This is for the hybrid course. Make sure that your cell phones are turned off while you're in course. Typically, if you've got an important conversation that you need to have it, you can have it in the hallway or go somewhere else to have it. We're not going to have it in class. So cell phones are certainly going to be on you. I understand that because we live in the 21st century, but make sure that I don't see them. I just want to pretend they don't exist. I don't want to hear them and I don't want to see them. You certainly should not have them out while the instructor is lecturing. And I think this is an important thing to consider. I have a very stringent cell phone policy. I don't allow cell phones ever in my class. So they should never really be out. The only exception to this is if we do like a debate, and then I'll tell you ahead of time you can bring your phones. But during lecture mode, they shouldn't be out. I know that we did a lot of teacher evaluations over the course of last year. And what we found was that there were just a bunch of classrooms where the teachers had prepared these great lectures and the students just were not engaged. They were all on cell phones. And I would even venture to say that right now, as I'm talking, there's people on cell phones doing the same thing. That's just the way it is. It's become an epidemic. But while you're in my classroom, there are no cell phones. One, because there actually is some evidence that shows that students who aren't on cell phones are more engaged. The opposite, right? The cell phone becomes a distraction. And so by minimizing distractions, you increase the ability of students to be effective. I think it was a Princeton study that showed that the students that had been on cell phones, they had a 30% less retention rate. And the students that had been on laptops, theirs was a little higher, but they were almost as bad as the cell phones because most of them weren't looking up things they were supposed to be looking up. And then the students who were writing pen and pencil, they were way ahead. So in my classes, I expect you to write notes. I basically don't have students who just sit there and stare at me. If you're staring at me, I'm just going to be like, are you okay? Do you need help of some kind? What's going on? You should be doing something, either writing something or whatever. Like you should stay busy because that kind of haptic learning is very important. Online classes, certainly, I don't care what you do. I mean, there's certainly not a lot I can do. I can't obviously go to your house and make sure that you're not looking at other things while you're supposed to be taking your history test. But the time limit is so narrow for y'all. It's going to be really hard to look up every single answer. So my recommendation is to study, plan ahead, so that way you're ready to go. So in short, I'm not going to babysit you, but you're adults. I treat you as such, but you're also responsible for what you get out of it. So if you don't put anything into the course, it's going to be very difficult to get anything out of it. Okay. Now, other aspects besides cell phone policy. We have your maintaining a clean learning environment, mostly for the hybrid course. Make sure you don't obviously make TSE any more shitty than what it usually is. Oh, I will talk about this. As far as my policy towards language, you'll notice that I use colorful language. That's pretty typical in many of the lectures that I gave. Number one, those lectures were given during COVID, some of them. So I was on all kinds of different medications at that time. Reason being, I got COVID like 6 times. I just kept getting it over and over again. So there's a few of the lectures in there where I had COVID and I was out of it. So I would literally give 3 or 4 lectures in a row and then I would just like pass out, sometimes on the floor. So it was bad. So I don't know a lot of times what the hell I was saying during some of those lectures. And so if I use bad language, I apologize ahead of time. But remember also that we're in an adult themed class. So I get very passionate about what I talk about. There's a lot of things that I care about when it comes to TSC, when it comes to my classes, when it comes to history. So every once in a while, right, they come out and it's not a personal thing. I'm not saying something to you. I'm not calling you fuckface or something, right? It's just how I talk, right? So just remember that when you sign up for an adult class, you're going to get adult themes. There's going to be adult things we talk about. We're going to talk about sexuality over the course of the semester. We're going to be talking about murder. We're going to be talking about warfare. We're going to be talking about things that are bloody, violent, politics, intrigues, all those kinds of things. So you're signing up for an adult class, you're going to get adult themes. Just make sure that you're aware of that. Anybody have any questions about that? Anybody have any issues with an adult themed class? Same way that you'd watch a stand-up comic, right? They're going to say outlandish stuff. Sometimes I say outlandish stuff just to see if you're paying attention. So it's important to make sure that you don't take it personally, right? It's not personal. It's a course. That's the way it's supposed to be done, right? And ultimately, I think there was a study about that students are teachers that typically use what I guess we'll call creative language. The students respond to it, especially here because I think Spanish has like more curse words than any other language there is. So I know personally because my wife, yeah. So she's called me just about every single one of those at one point. So I think it helps to keep students' attention, right? It helps to keep them focused on what they're supposed to be focused on. So it does have a role. It's not just me just having a potty mouth, right? It does kind of bring you back for this. You kind of get lost or you get focused on something else. All right. Respect is the last thing. As far as respect, make sure you have respect for yourselves, respect for your instructor. Uh, Again, sometimes we're going to have disagreements in the class. We look at things from different perspectives. I have non-traditional students. I have military students. I have students who've come out of life in different ways. I have some students who are fresh out of high school, right? You all have different perspectives, different political parties, different ways of looking at the world. Those are strengths, those aren't weaknesses. So just because somebody may not necessarily agree with you, right? It's not cause to burn that bridge. I know, just as an example, I had a student, I think about 4 or 5 years ago, who had a disagreement with another student, and that student was kind of a bigger individual. And so he ended up basically saying, well, you know all about that, wouldn't you, Kool-Aid man? And it was a personal attack. And so, of course, at that point, I had to step in. Don't get to that point. All right. If you disagree with the evidence. Don't disagree with the person. Those are called ad hominem or to the person attacks. Disagree with how it's being said. Don't necessarily disagree like to the person. Don't get personal with how they look or how they dress or what their name is, etc. Everybody understand the difference? Wish I could tell you that academia like is always professional, but it isn't. There's all kinds of personality conflicts in academia, and there's some guys who just never learn how to play nice. But you don't want to be in that boat. You want to be professional about what you do, and especially as a historian, being dispassionate is one of your greatest traits. Any other questions as far as the course and my expectations? I think I've kind of run through just about everything as far as what I'm looking for. Nothing. Covered everything. I think most y'all just want to get out of here. Hour and a half. Yeah. Okay. So we'll have occasionally throughout the semester, we'll have tests on it. So make sure that you're very much aware of the syllabus and its policies. You know the 5 themes. Make sure that you're definitely aware of who I am as your instructor and the course policies and procedures. So that pretty much covers, I think, what I was going to do as far as syllabus is concerned. Again, if you have additional questions, rob.raymaker@tsc.edu. Again, it was a pleasure meeting all of y'all. Right. I hope you have a wonderful semester. And for the most part, hopefully we have a fantastic world civilizations course with all of y'all. Have a great semester, guys. Talk to you later.